Hello and welcome to another episode of Mysteries with a History, where I'll take you on a wild ride into the unknown, the strange, and the mysterious. Like you, I have questions, and like you, I want answers. There's more to this world than most think or believe. Mysteries that stretch back into murky epochs of time, that hint of other worlds, other realms, and other intelligences. We're on this journey together, and with each episode, we will peel away the layers to look for the truth. Before we even get into today's show, which let me tell you, I am so excited for this show and all the topics that we're going to be covering. I do want to mention that you're no longer getting 3 shows a week right here on this channel. You're now getting 4 shows a week. And this new one is called The Unknown Zone. I just put out a trailer on my YouTube that kind of gives you a feeling of what it's all about. And pretty much they're short form videos, about 8 to 10 minutes long, talking about one specific topic. So it's really fantastic for those that want a short form video on things that really do interest us. And while it's only think like 8 or 9 minutes. It took me 24 hours to make. So I think that after this next show that I do, this next video, it won't take me as long now that I have a format and a better framework to use. But the first one always takes me the longest. So I really hope you like it. It's going to premiere this upcoming Monday. And make sure to comment and like it because I think you're gonna like it because I made it with you in mind and to get more people my age and those younger interested in the topics that we cover on Mysteries with a History, that we cover on Shifting the Paradigm, and that we even cover on Strange Weekly News. So now 4 shows a week instead of 3. Now let's get into today. We live in a world of unexplained mysteries. When we dig into some of these mysteries, we can catch glimpses of realities that can terrify us, inspire us, and even unite us. From aspects of the myths and legends to the paranormal and supernatural, through to the many facets of cryptids, the human mind is challenged to take the adventure, to push forward into the murky realms of things unseen, unheard, and unexplained. So today, it's going to be all about Halloween, cryptids, and some very scary myths and legends that I came across that I wanted to go ahead and share with you. There is no co host today, it is just me. And so make sure to have a nice hot or cold drink, snuggle up in a blanket, put this on medium volume because we're going to get pretty spooky today. But let's first set the scene of why are we even getting spooky today? Well, it's close to Halloween. It's not October, it's Ghost-tober. Officially, we can never change that now. And because it is this season, let's talk about the history of Halloween to get started. Oracle, thank you so much for the super sticker. I deeply, deeply appreciate it. Android Purity says, Christina Gomez, 4 shows a week? Please be careful not to burn yourself out, but thank you. Thanks. Skyhawk, Ghost Tobers, all because of you. Terry, thank you so much for the super chat as well. So let's get into it. First off, are you familiar with the history of Halloween? I've looked at it in the past and I feel like I usually forget about it when the next year comes. So, if this is merely a refresher for you, stay tuned. Maybe you'll learn something new right here, right now. So, it all it's believed to have started with the Celts. So, Samhain or Samhain means summer's end by the Celts, and summer's end, which is meant to be the beginning of winter, was an important time for people who survived on plants grown in the field and animals that were kept in pastures. This day marked the end of summer and the harvest and the beginning of the dark, cold winter, a time of year, right, where it was often associated with human death. And I'm going to share just some pictures here of how we imagine Halloween today, just to give some people a visual while I continue reading you a little bit about the legends and the history of Halloween. Mark Tasaka. Thank you. It says, Christina, looking forward to your Halloween show. 4 shows a week is amazing. Keep up the excellent work. Thank you. So here is just one picture for you. And let's be honest. For those watching this on YouTube, and if you are listening to this on a podcast platform, jump over to YouTube. I'm sharing a lot of pictures here today, but truly, Halloween back in the day in the 1940s, 50s, and maybe even the 60s, those costumes are so much scarier than wearing like Freddy Krueger or something today. This is horrifying. And yet to them it was very childlike and exciting. I don't see that, but that's okay. I wasn't born in that time period, which I kind of wish I was. But let's continue with this. So, this festival by the Celtic Society was a very, very important one because, if anything, they were creating these bonfires to say, Sun, please don't leave this winter because we are aware once winter comes, there's going to be a lot of death, not just from our family members, but also crops and our livestock as well. And that's why during this festival specifically, it was believed by the Druids, which are the Celtic pagans, they believed that the spirits of those who died the preceding year roamed the earth that exact night because during that period, that's when they believed the veil was the most thin between the living and the dead. So the Druids celebrated this holiday with a great fire festival to encourage the dimming sun not to vanish, just like how I mentioned. But here's the kicker, they would dance around the bonfires to keep evil spirits away, but left their doors open in hopes that the kind spirits of the loved ones might join them around these bonfires. So it was a kind of a love-hate relationship, it seems like. You're opening the door, but you don't really know what you're opening the door to. That's why, listen to this. That's why they wore costumes. They wore animal skins, animal heads, and they would disguise themselves so that evil spirits wouldn't be able to recognize them. If, let's say, a living person terrorized someone that passed over, or to even possess the living's body as well. And that's kind of how we have costumes today. It all started out of fear, but also out of tricksters. See, when you wear a costume, when you wear a mask, no one knows who you are, not the living and not the dead. And that is when you have this, I want to say, like creative range to go ahead and play pranks, to do vandalism and things like this. And even to this day, 2022, people are still doing things like this. Hides, thank you so much. It says Happy Ghostober. We're going to have to say that every single day. We got to say it every day to somebody. Be like, hey, you, Happy Ghostober. And they're going to look at you and be like, who are you? Doesn't matter. Happy Ghostober. And that's how you make friends. So, this is kind of the beginning of the Halloween that we celebrate today. It was because of the Celts. But then, when local people converted to Christianity during the early Middle Ages, the Roman Catholic Church often incorporated modified versions of older religious traditions in order to win converts. So Pope Gregory IV wanted to substitute this Celtic festival with All Saints' Day in 835 AD, but All Souls' Day, which is November 2nd, which is closer in resemblance to this Celtic festival and Halloween today, was first institutionalized as a French as a French festival in 1998, no, in 998, excuse me. And that's really when it began to spread across Europe. Now, you might think, oh, yeah, All Saints Day, November 2nd. It sounds like Dia de los Muertos. Yes, it does, which means Day of the Dead or Day of the Ancestors. And just like with All Saints Day, this was a time period for those in Mesoamerica, very specifically in Mexico, where they believed that also the veil was very thin between the living and the dead. But in this case, for Dia de los Muertos, they were a bit more happy and excited to be able to interact with their deceased loved ones. And we're going to get into that in just a moment. But Jessica, thank you. As always, it says on your RV tours when you're in Massachusetts, make sure it's around Halloween time and visit Salem, Massachusetts, because the whole town history is amazing and the celebrations that still go on today are great. I'm in. Let's do it. Sounds like fun. Thank you very much. So during October 31st and November 2nd, in the Spanish culture, they thought that that's the best time to have communication with our loved ones. Let's dress up, let's bring food, let's bring candles, let's bring flowers, let's decorate our loved ones' tombs, and let's have a good time. Let's party hard with them. And this went on for centuries, really, and it's still practiced today. Now, of course, in the modern time, have it be Dia de los Muertos or All Saints Day or Halloween, it's a lot more commercialized, right? You gotta have the right costume, you gotta have the right makeup on, you gotta have the right food that's very specific to impress your guests. But during this time period, just really not too long ago, maybe just a few hundred years, it was really more to be in touch with the dead. Of course, when we talk about Halloween, it makes you question, well, then how did this whole thing with carving pumpkins get started? Like, whose idea was that to buy a pumpkin and then think, I'm going to carve a face on it. I'm going to put a candle. Just let it sit on my front porch for like 4 weeks until it starts rotting. That's a great idea. Which, to be honest, I absolutely loved carving pumpkins as a child. That was like my favorite thing, which I wasn't obviously allowed to carve pumpkins, but I could kind of give the idea of what design I wanted as a child. Well, it all started back in Ireland. So the tradition of jack-o'-lanterns, right? It was actually not carving pumpkins, but carving turnips instead. And it's allegedly based on a legend about a man named Stingy Jack who repeatedly trapped the devil and only let him go on the condition that Jack would never go to hell. But when Jack died, he learned that heaven didn't want his soul either. So he was forced to wander the earth as a ghost for eternity. The devil gave Jack a burning lump of coal and a carved out turnip to light his way. Locals eventually began carving scary faces on their own turnips to frighten away evil spirits. And that's how it all started. Now, I really hope for the majority of people that carve pumpkins and like know how to cook, use the insides, use the guts for like pumpkin soup, pumpkin pie, pumpkin seeds. Those are so good. All of those things. See, I was not that innovative as a child, and I would just throw it away in the trash. Now, I would attempt to make pumpkin soup because that is so good. I'm not a huge fan of pumpkin pie, but for those in the live chat listening and watching this live, what is your favorite pumpkin food? Let me know. Is it pumpkin pie, pumpkin soup, pumpkin cake? I don't know if that's a thing. Um, I know pumpkin candles isn't a food, but pumpkin smelling things also smell great. Pumpkin lattes. So I do want to hear exactly which one's your favorite. Skyhawk's foreshadowing right here. we're going to get there. Well, we still got a little teensy bit more to cover about Halloween to get into the spirits before we talk about that. And I'm not even going to say it out loud for those listening in instead of watching. Hyde says pumpkin chai tea. I've actually have not tried that. I do want to try that now. Skyhawk says pumpkin bars with white icing. TMI says pumpkin pie. Eddie says pumpkin pie or bars. Jessica, pumpkin donuts. I'm in. I actually had some yesterday. They were so good. Not like just regular donuts, not pumpkin donuts, but still fantastic. So keep telling me these while I continue a little bit about Halloween. So, talking about food, I think this is a really great transition. When people think of Halloween, they think about candy corn, right? It's candy corn is the epitome of Halloween candy. That is what you need to eat on Halloween. If you don't know what candy corn is, you're not missing out. It's pure sugar, corn syrup, and butter. It looks like this. It's 3 layers of yellow, orange, and white. And to be honest with you, do not tell anyone else, but I really do not like candy corn. I like using it as like decorations, people that are good bakers. It looks fantastic. But the taste and the texture, no. Well, let's just talk a teensy bit about the history of candy corn. So it all started really back in the late 1880s. And then in 1889, that's when it began to be not only mass produced, but like accepted. Here's the thing, this is kind of crazy. Candy corn was originally called chicken feed, and it's sold in boxes with the slogan, something worth crowing for. Eventually, it just turned into a type of Halloween type candy because it's candy corn. Corn is associated with harvest time. And then it was not until about the 1950s where trick or treating really grew in popularity in the United States that candy corn was just dropped in people's bags. Do you like candy corn? Please let me know. I do want to know because I don't know how you're going to sell me on it. It's like 3 ingredients, but just the texture is kind of grody. I do want to shout out to my podcast listeners and invite you to make a point to jump over, in the future and join a live show and live chat here on YouTube. I want to meet all of you from the podcast platforms. So, if you want to know when all of these shows are posted, come to my Twitter at eyes_on the skies where I place all of my updates. So if you're a listener, but you want to be a viewer, jump by. I want to say hi to you. All right, now we are done talking about Halloween, giving you a good foundation to get you in the mood for the rest of today's show. And Skyhawk foreshadowed something, and I think we should go ahead and start there. For my newer viewers and listeners, you might not know, but I have a slight obsession with Pukwudgies. Now, if you are a regular listener or viewer, you know I got to say it every single show. But you might ask, what the heck are Pukwudgies? What are they? What is going on? Well, okay, for those listening, think of the word Pukwudgie. Imagine it in your mind. Hold it for a second. Okay, you're holding on to that image of a Pukwudgie. Crumble it up, throw it away because it probably looks nothing like how you imagined it. I was heartbroken when I found out what they looked like because they just sound so cute and so cuddly, and they're not. They're evil, they're mischievous, they're fat, and they're short type of goblins of the East, right? Back in Massachusetts, right in the heart of the Bridgewater Triangle. If you don't know what the Bridgewater Triangle is, I did 2 shows on the topic. It's a crazy location, very much like Skinwalker Ranch, where you're having literally everything weird happening in just like one location right in Massachusetts. If you want to learn more about it, jump over to YouTube or to podcast platforms and you will find the Mysteries of the Bridgewater Triangle Part 1 and Part 2. So, let me share a picture here. And I got ahead of myself just a moment ago about what a Pukwudgie looks like, but I'm going to share another one just to give y'all a visual while I go into a little bit more detail on Pukwudgies for those that aren't familiar with these legends, or even if you want to call them cryptids as well. Cam Fuzzy, thank you so much for the super chat. It says, what made so many cultures worldwide so afraid of evil spirits? How many people nowadays do you hear getting hit by evil spirits? This is an interesting question, and I think one that is very appropriate for today. A lot of the stories that we come across in myth and legends, even cryptid stories as well, ghost encounters, usually they're going to be somewhat evil or malevolent, because then who wants to hear a story about a happy ghost unless it's Casper, right? It's not really going to grab that same momentum as a scary story. Now, I'm not sure, many people would come out and publicly talk about paranormal encounters. I mean, we have seen TV shows sometimes of people talking about this, but the majority of people are going to keep these stories to themselves. But for instance, like with UFO sightings, there is a ridicule factor there. Even today, while it's not so much so as a few decades prior, it's still slightly the case. So hopefully that kind of answered your question. And thank you once again. So let's talk about Pukwudgies. First off, how many of you have heard of Pukwudgies? Not just me saying the name, but like actually knowing the legends behind it and possibly even the encounters as well. If not, don't worry, because we are going to get into that, because Pukwudgies are my favorite thing to talk about just because they sound so cute. And I found the Pukwudgie cuddly toy on Amazon, and I ordered it. Like, don't tell me of the future, but me of the present was pretty darn excited. So I'm excited to show it to you when it comes in the mail. All right, let's get into this. So, Pukwudgies are usually described as being knee high or even smaller, and they literally mean person of the wilderness, and they are usually considered to be spirits of the forest. In some traditions, they have a sweet smell and are associated with flowers, kind of like fairies, for instance, like the European version of fairies. Pukwudgies have magical powers, which vary from tribe to tribe, but they may include the ability to turn invisible, confuse people, or make them forget things. Also, they're possibly able to shapeshift into cougars or other dangerous animals, or even bring harm to people by just staring at them. Native Americans believed that Pukwudgies were creatures that had once lived in harmony with humans, but had turned against them a little while after. They are featured in the folklore of many diverse cultures, Native American cultures and tribes across North America, which includes the United States and Canada. But there is one story in particular that I think is one of my favorites. It's a totally alleged account, but it was this story and the name that made me fall in love with these creatures. And you're thinking, Christina, these things are porcupine type people. Like, how could you love them? Well, in this one encounter that a man had, didn't really sound like that. And his name is Bill Russo. And about approximately 30 years ago, he was walking his dog. And that's when he had an encounter somewhat in the evening time. So it wasn't straight up daytime, it wasn't nighttime, it was like a good evening. But to be honest, look, I love the name more than the cryptid. So I just want to clarify that. I love the name, not the cryptid, okay? But spooky season, so scary ish. So Russo's dog is named Samantha, and she is a German Shepherd Rottweiler mix. Now imagine that type of dog. They're not really scared of anything, right? They're the kind of protective dogs that are there for you and to take care of you, right? Well, This one time when Russo was walking down the same road he always walks his dog, Samantha was shaken like a washing machine, as he said. And then he hears something, and it says, and he doesn't see it first, but it says, "Kier, Kier, Iwan Chu, Iwan Chu." And Russo looks and he sees this weird looking entity, 3 feet tall, maybe 4 feet, kind of like a stuffed animal, like maybe a teddy bear, 100 pounds or so, with a pot belly, eyes a little bit too big for his head. And he says, "I always say, like, I think about a cat in a sense. It was monitoring me, beckoning me with its arm or paw or whatever you want to call it to come over to this creature." Now, Russo had no courage to go forward to see this creature any closer, but he stated in an interview that the creature was not threatening him. All it was trying to do was to get him to come closer to the forest, to the edge of the forest, and to this entity. However, the Pukwudgie did not move forward at all. It was as if it was in some kind of barrier or force field of some kind to where it couldn't cross a certain line. And it was as if Russo had to get closer to the creature to go ahead and attempt to understand what this Pukwudgie wanted. Well, as I had mentioned a little bit earlier, the dog was mortified. And Russo kind of took that as a sign, thinking, maybe I really shouldn't get close to this creature, let alone I'm already terrified to begin with. My dog's terrified. If I were to get closer, my dog wouldn't protect me. And it's a German Shepherd Rottweiler mix. These things are vicious. All right, this is a sign I shouldn't get any closer. And yet this entity continued. Kier, Kier, Iwan Chu. And as Russo, he ended up running home. He was like, forget this. I'm out of here. But as he looks back, and in the interview that he was a part of, he thought, Kier, Kier, what does that mean? Was it attempting to speak to me, attempting to communicate with me in English, saying like, come here? And then he thought, Iwan Chu, what could that mean? And he said, we want you? Is that what this Pukwudgie was implying? So the whole sentence, as Russo believes, goes, come here, come here. We want you. Eerie, isn't it? Very scary. But it was that story and the name that really got me to fall in love with Pukwudgies. And if you're a new listener, you will know I will attempt to say the word Pukwudgie once in every show that I do, aside from shifting the paradigm, of course. But the other ones, I try to put it in there when I can because it's just so cute. And well, that's the story of the Pukwudgie. So for those that have heard the name and didn't know the story, now you know it. And I think it's another just fantastic way to start into all of these scary creatures and cryptids. But there's one that I wouldn't want to encounter. One that I find honestly pretty terrifying. And those are the black-eyed kids. If you know what these entities are, hang tight. We are going to be sharing a few stories that maybe you've not heard of, and also some speculations on what people, researchers, think these black-eyed children might actually be. Are they actually children, or are they just century-old entities of some kind that are just evil and malevolent? Well, let's get into that. I'm going to share a picture here just as a visual aid while I go ahead and read this. Already pretty spooky. Okay, so the black-eyed kids are believed to be children. It's never really adults. It's usually kids, and their eyes are completely black. There is no white in their eyes. There's no green, blue, brown, whatever beautiful eyeballs you have. It's none of those colors. It's just black. And in most cases, it'll be one or more children in an age range spanning about 8 to 11 years old, and they'll either ask for a ride home if someone encounters them while in their vehicle, or if they'll also be encountered if they knock on the front door of a residence, asking to be allowed to enter the home. There have been some people that have claimed they have encountered these scary entities. Now, for people that have looked at them, encountered them, they mention that for the most part, they're not wearing shoes. They look kind of dirty and shabby sometimes. And oddly enough, there are certain occurrences where their clothing actually looks outdated. Sometimes even their vocabulary is outdated as well, in the sense of if they might say, "Hey, can I borrow your phone?" They might use a different terminology, a more antique one, instead of saying just a phone. So they appear to be devoid of any type of personality or emotions until sometimes raising to an angry state when being told no and answers to their questions. And what are their questions? Can I come in? Very much like a vampire. For those who haven't encountered this topic, there's a decent amount of stories that you can find online of people that state they have encountered these. I have two stories for you. One of them being the birth of the black-eyed kids. When did this story happen? When did this all start? Well, this took place in 1996 and involved the journalist Brian Bethel, a resident of Abilene, Texas. In Bethel's report, he described stopping in a parking lot near a movie theater to write a check during the late evening. He was so absorbed in what he was doing that he didn't notice two young boys approaching his car. It wasn't until the older looking boy tapped on the driver's side window that he became aware of any nearby presence. And he rolled down his window, right, to perceive a soul racking fear. And chills just ran down his spine, though he couldn't understand why at first. These are just children. What should Bethel be afraid of? Well, the boy said that he and his brother wanted to catch a movie, but had forgotten their money at home. Could Bethel give him a ride? They assured him, very strangely, that it wasn't going to take long, that they were just two innocent kids, and here's the weird part, they reassured Bethel that they didn't have any weapons. Okay, let me repeat that. One, they told Bethel, it's not going to take long. We're just innocent kids. We don't have any weapons. That's pretty terrifying already in itself. The journalist found the assurances unnerving and noted the latest showing of the film they wanted to see had already started and would be nearly over by the time he would drive them anywhere, right? And then come back to the movie theater. In his later telling of the incident, so like time afterward, he stated that when he broke eye contact with these kids, his fear became absolutely overwhelming to the point of panic. And it wasn't until that he completely broke eye contact with these kids that the boy had noticed, okay, sorry, Bethel had noticed that their eyes were completely black. Keep in mind, this is happening at night, so it's kind of difficult to see. But when Bethel looks up at these kids' eyes, he says, oh my gosh, they're completely black. There's nothing there. this is very, very, very scary. And his encounter was already terrifying enough. Now that he sees these kids' eyes, it's more so. Keep in mind that when you hold a conversation with anyone, you look at their eyes, you look at their eye movement, and it from there, as the saying goes, the eyes are the gateway to the soul. Some people believe that if you look into someone's eyes, you can see their true intentions. And so in this case, for Bethel, he looks up, he sees these kids' eyes, and they're just black. You can't read anything from them except since the moment these kids encountered him, he was mortified. Now, this is an alleged account. Okay, we understand that. But to this day, he has stuck to his story. And keep in mind, he is also a journalist. Take with that what you will on his background, but it's a pretty fascinating encounter. And I think that if you really want to scare someone on Halloween, don't put a mask, don't be Michael Myers, don't be Freddy Krueger, even Hellraiser. Just get those really big black contacts, wear a hoodie, don't wear shoes, or wear, like, I don't know, something kind of safe, and just knock on people's door and ask them, can I come in? Don't even say trick or treat. That's going to be the scariest costume you could probably ever have, and it requires very little effort to create. All you got to do is just buy some pretty big black contacts, which are kind of scary to put in because they're really, really big to cover all the white in your eyes, but it's not something that I think I would wear. Well, as I just mentioned, wear it for Halloween. Okay. Well, there I have a story for you. And if you do want those contacts, they're called, I think, sclera lenses. So take a look at those if you are interested. Now let's share this story, but first let me just drink some water. So on Halloween, a neighbor didn't put up his lights, right? Because we understand what that means. When the porch lights aren't on, they don't want anyone knocking on the door because they're not going to give him candy. Okay, that's just the protocol. Well, the year prior to this story, this neighbor's porch lights were on. He was ready to give kids candy. He was ready to compliment kids' costumes because Halloween used to be his favorite time of the year. So at 11:30 p.m., the doorbell rings on Halloween night. And he comes over thinking it's kind of rude that some kids are going to be coming so late to the door. Like, my lights aren't on. Well, actually, no, sorry, my lights are on. So I guess in a sense, it's fair game. All right, all right. I'm going to open the door. I'm going to give these kids their candy, even though it's 11:30 at night. Like, come on, give me a break. Well, as he opens the door, fear enters him. The same occurring theme as with Brian Bethel. So he sees two kids, and one of them, maybe about 16 years old, the other one, 12. Neither of them were dressed, but they had these emotionless faces. He thought, okay, maybe, it's some type of costume and they're not trying to break character. All right, so they're not smiling. All right, fine, whatever. But here's the thing. They didn't ask for candy. They didn't even say trick or treat. But they asked to come inside to use his phone. He says that their mom must have been worried about them. This is when the neighbor was filled with dread and tries to, like, inch the door closer and closer to the wall and kind of trying to say, no, sorry, good night. Like, I don't want anything to do with you. But the boys were not taking no for an answer. They kept asking and asking until the man closed the door completely. He then goes back to the TV and he puts the volume very, very low to attempt to listen to the boys in case they try to break the window or steal something or whatever. But these boys, they just leave. And to this day, he is horrified to just not participate in Halloween the years after. So the next day, or sometime afterward, the neighbor talks to someone else and he was thinking, It's kind of interesting. Those kids, they weren't really dressed up, but they had some pretty cool contact lenses. I guess kind of like the black-eyed kids. And he didn't understand that term at that moment. But literally, they were just black-eyed kids. That was it. And then he talks to his other neighbor and he tells the story. And the neighbor says, "What? Do you mean the black-eyed kids? Like, you saw them?" And he says, "What do you mean I saw them? It was just kids in costume." And the guy says, "No, no, 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 no. They're this really scary force, these weird entities. And if you invite them to your house, you don't make it alive to tell the tale." This is also a reoccurring theme, and I'm going to speed up because we have so much to cover today. But some researchers believe, because there's a lot of people that have encountered black eyed kids, a ton. And it's believed that in some way, in some form, these kids are attempting to steal someone's life force or even their very soul. There are some that believe that they're even trying to steal their blood as well, very much like vampires, in the same respect that vampires need to be invited in to a house. Okay, well, these black eyed kids are the exact same. It makes it super duper creepy. And there has been no one, to my understanding, that has invited the black eyed kids and were able to tell that tale. Okay, pretty wild. Before we continue with this, one, I hope you're enjoying these spooky stories. Two, Jimmy just got back from Egypt, and that's why he is not with me on the show today, because he probably has jet lag, bless his heart, and, doing all the talking. So I am so thankful. I've got plenty of water to drink before the show, during the show, and after the show. But Jimmy will be back next week. Okay, let's move forward. So, like I said, we don't have too much time. So, I'm kind of skipping over a few of these and we'll talk about the next one. How many of you are familiar with the Chupacabra? This story, or these encounters, while they're somewhat modern, they've taken on a form of its own, truly becoming a more modern urban legend that is known across the Americas, North and South America. Deranged Lunatic, thank you so much. Really do appreciate that. Let me just drink some more water. Hmm, so good. Okay. So, you've probably heard the term chupacabra, but like, what is this entity and what happened to make it so famous? I will be very, very honest with you here. I had not heard of the Chupacabra until I watched an episode of Scooby Doo. That's how I came across the story when they were attempting to chase one of them. Great cartoon, by the way. I haven't seen it in probably like a decade. So I don't know much of the details, but I just do remember them saying the term chupacabra, and I'm like, wow, I've never heard of that before. And that's how it all started, of my interest in this. Mm. Eddie says, never turn your back to a L chupacabra. That is so correct. You never want to turn your back against any evil entity, right? Dangerous. So I'm going to share a screen, right? My screen, to just give people a visual aid. And I have 3 pictures that I'm going to show you, and they all kind of look different. And that's what's very bizarre about this legend in particular. And this is consistent across a lot of cryptids and mythology. The creatures, they kind of morph from person to person when they tell the story or when they attempt to do the rendition. So here's one image. It looks like a type of like sea creature with spikes and freaky. I would not want to see one. Well, this story, while it is new and definitely not as new as the Slender Man folklore, which has taken a life of its own. If you don't know the stories, wow, we're not going to cover those today, but maybe we might in the future. Well, this one, oh, and even the Hat Man as well, also very scary, but that was more of like an ancient-ish type of legend. So this kind of got its 2 feet, in a sense, in the 1990s in Puerto Rico, where there were farming communities that were being terrorized by what they called the goat sucker or el chupacabra. And these initial sightings came at a time where farmers were walking in the morning to find their goats and sheep dead, their uneaten carcasses completely drained of blood, with 3 puncture wounds in their neck. Over the coming months, in another small town, hundreds of animals, including cows, pigs, chickens, and even domestic pets, were slaughtered this way. And as more and more locals heard of this story, the more and more of them reported seeing a type of bipedal, scaly looking creature with spikes down its back in massive claws roaming the night. Now, in the early 2000s in Texas and elsewhere in the southwestern United States, people start finding dead animals resembling, in a sense, the chupacabra description. It was hairless, it was four legged creature with kind of burnt looking skin. Honestly, they don't really sound that similar between what the Puerto Ricans were saying and what these Americans were saying. But let's continue with this. When a lot of people in the southwest of the US were coming across these weird type of creatures, they began to realize that they were just your average dog, that they were just losing this immense hair known as sarcoptic mange. And this is a very highly contagious skin disease, fairly common in dogs, and it forces its sufferers to itch away at mites, and it just kind of like rips apart their skin, takes away their hair, gives them scabs and things like this. And then the story was brushed off. It's like, okay, now we know the myth. We uncovered the story. That's what chupacabras are. But I'm going to have to disagree here. Only because the two descriptions sound completely different. Are chupacabras actually real? I have no clue. There have been those that have truly attempted to do the research on these creatures, but no one knows for certain. And it honestly kind of sounds to me like a creature from HP Lovecraft Nightmare Cthulhu series of books, right? It kind of does. Like the what's it called? The Dagon sea creatures. That's kind of what it looks like in this first image here, and also kind of what it sounds like. Also, if we're sticking to the story in Puerto Rico, their livestock were completely drained of blood with 3 puncture wounds. No average dog is just gonna like suck up blood, right? That's why the chupacabra is literally called the goat sucker. I think it's something worth considering. It's a fun story. Actually, it's terrifying. I really hope no one encounters a chupacabra ever. But if you do, please take a picture and send it to me at Cristina@strangeparadigms.com. Thank you. So, there is something that I did want to mention on today's show, talking about cryptids, right? And we're going to get into some pretty terrifying myths, but we're going to hold on to that just for a moment. We state, well, like, what's a cryptid? Okay. Well, we're looking at them and stating, well, it's something that people see, but we have no evidence of them. We don't have a dead body. We don't have bones. We don't have evidence, right? That's what a cryptid is. Until we get a dead body, bones, blah, 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 that's when it will no longer be a cryptid, but it'll be a documented animal. Well, there have been some animals now that we as a society accept were once considered cryptids, that they're like, this is too crazy of an animal to be real. I don't believe you. So I want to share those with you. The first one is, I'm just going to share my picture here because some of you have kids and you know this picture very well. It's also like one of my favorite cartoons next to SpongeBob. It's Perry the platypus from Phineas and Ferb. And you're like, what the heck? Well, talking about the platypus. Yes, before the late 1700s, People thought it was this elusive creature that could never exist because it's a mammal that can lay eggs and it's also poisonous. Everything that we thought we believed on mammals was being torn apart by the platypus. And so that's why, for such a long period of time, people are like, nope, the platypus is a cryptid. There is no way it can have webbed feet and a beak, but it's a mammal, but somehow it lays eggs, and somehow, in some way, it's also venomous. What? Yes. Well, turns out in 1797, that's when more research was being done on it. They came across the very first carcass of a platypus and they said, hmm, yeah, some indigenous tribes were right and we were wrong. Okay, I'm gonna take back what I just said. And when I came across this, I'm thinking, now that you mention it, platypi, they sound pretty bizarre. So, like, if I didn't know anything about them and someone were to tell me this is a platypus and these are all its characteristics, I would think, yeah, and just tell me that a centaur is my neighbor. Why don't you? Of course. How could I possibly believe what you're telling me? Now we have the evidence, and you're like, okay, well, now I have to believe it because it's right in front of me. And the reason to why I bring this up is because maybe the cryptids of today at some point will be proven to be true. Or maybe we'll just simply never know. And that's why it will always remain a mystery. I have one more creature that was thought to be a cryptid and isn't. And I'm going to speed through this one a little bit faster. But consistently, usually across the globe, right? Any place that has a lake, you're going to have a lake monster. If you're near the coast, you're going to have some type of like ocean monster, dragon, serpent thing. And they're scary. And usually this happens to be across like throughout the 18, 17, and 1800s. That's when a lot of these monsters emerged into our modern day understanding of monsters because of that time period. And sea serpents, monster sea serpents, are just a well accepted myth across the globe. Well, there is one creature that if someone were to explain it to me, I would say, yeah, that's a monster. I hope it doesn't exist. It's definitely a cryptid until it was caught in 2001. That's very, very, very darn recent when they got the first image of the oarfish. Look at how big this is. And for those that are listening, it can grow to at least 56 feet or 17 meters long. I would not want to be swimming in any lake, any river, any ocean. I don't care. And like come across this very scary monster. It's not even a fish. That is a total monster. And I think that it's really awesome today that it's now accepted as fact and it's no longer a cryptid. And it's scary. It's huge. I have some more pictures here. Here's another one. Here you have a scuba diver right here, or snorkeler, and it's giving a little bit of comparison with this ginormous, scary looking fish, snake serpent. And there's another one. So I thought it was kind of nice to give that balance between cryptids that we still think are cryptids and things that are no longer cryptids. It's scary. It's spooky season. We got to cover it. But I have some very, very scary myths for you from across the world. And these are ones that I have never ever encountered until doing the research for today's show. So I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one that hasn't heard of these stories. And these are the type of things that would give you nightmares. So snuggle up in a blanket, or if you're listening to this at work or on the road, drive safely, please, because I have some scary stories for you. And I'm going to share my screen here of this first entity. If you have arachnophobia, you might want to look away because I will be sharing some pictures. We're going to share you the scariest one first. Okay, let's share this image. All right. These are just visual aids while I tell the story. So, this story is one of the many yokai in Japanese mythology. This that we're seeing right now is the Jorogumo, and it's one of the most famous of them all. The Jorogumo is a deadly spider woman who has the ability to both enchant and bring misery upon those who deal with it. It is one of the large number of yokai, which are supernatural spirit entities that can be both malevolent and benevolent in nature, but usually dealing with attractiveness, but also calamity as well. So, the first recording of this very scary looking creature is in the story, this things that ought to be pondered even in urgent times. And it describes a young samurai who encounters a beautiful young woman carrying a child in her arms. The woman, who was a total stranger to the man, pointed at the samurai and tells the child, "Him, there surely is your father. Go forth and be embraced." However, the samurai realizes the woman is not what she seems, and he attacks her and he slashes her with his blade, whereupon she escapes to the attic of a house. This also sounds very much like an H.P. Lovecraft nightmare. This one as well. But let me continue with this. The very next morning, in the attic, all they find is the corpse of a giant Juro spider, about 2 feet long, along with bodies of the victims it had murdered and eaten. Okay, while that's a very, very short story, let's kind of dissect that a little bit. And Michael, thank you so much. It says, sorry to go off topic, but I just wanted to say thank you, Christina, for your work. I had an experience 30 years ago, which I'm still confused about, but only started to talk about with your help. Please support the RV fund. Thank you so much, Michael. And when it comes to encounters, I've had one myself and they're so personal that sometimes it's just not easy to share, but also you just don't know where to look. And I think that we have created such a warm community here on this channel, and especially with the Discord server as well, that people are so openly able to share their stories and to be encouraged. And so, and I know, Michael, you're a part of the Discord server, but for those that are interested, that to want to be surrounded by literally 1,000 other members that are like minded, such as you and I, come to our Discord server where you can share your stories, where you can share weird information, have it be science, ghosts, UFOs, you name it, it's there. And it's a really, really a supportive, friendly environment where you can also have discussions as well and healthy debate. And you also get insights from other people. So take a look at it. I think it really is worth your time. There's another story about this spider woman, and here's actually one of the original drawings back in the 17 and 1800s when this was created. So this is a very old story that has been well accepted across Japan and in Japanese mythology. And you can see it's a woman, it has these creepy looking legs, and it's just spewing out other spiders and spider webs and stuff. But now we have some more modern renditions, modern artwork of these freaky looking creatures. Well, here's another oh, actually, before we even continue with that story, I said I was going to go back to the one that we just covered. So here, we are looking at a woman, a total stranger, that lures in men with a child, stating, see, you are the father to my child. Therefore, we need to be back together. And that's when she eats them. Nom, 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 nom. And then she puts them in the webs in that attic that I had just mentioned. And that's how she feeds. She lures people in with her attractiveness, with her child, and with her street smarts as well. But in this case, the samurai saw right through it and he killed her. Well, here is another story, and it's a kind of slightly different dynamic. And this story is called How Maguruku Was Deceived by a Jorogumu. And I'm so sorry that my accent is probably terrible for those that speak Japanese or even watch anime. I'm deeply ashamed of my accent. Okay, so as the story goes, Magu Maguroku was resting in his patio when, just as he was about to fall asleep, a well dressed woman of around 50 years old appeared before him, and she told him that her daughter really liked him. And he was like, wow, like, my daughter is madly in love with you. Come back to my estate so that you can meet my daughter. And there, her daughter, a 16-year-old girl, confessed her love to him and asked him to marry her. As this man was already married, he refused her. However, the girl insisted, stating that although this man had almost attempted to kill my mother 2 days ago, look, I'm still madly in love with you. My feelings stayed true. Let's get married. However, this man rejects her feelings completely. Confused by her words, he escapes the woman's estate. He's running. He's going for it. He's terrified, right? This woman this girl is confessing her love to him. He doesn't even know who she is. And she claimed that I almost killed her mother. Like, what does she mean? I don't even know this woman. So he's just running out of confusion, right? And as he keeps running, the estate behind him, it just vanishes. And then he found himself lying back on his patio, as if he had just woken up from a dream. His wife told him that he'd been asleep the entire day. The entire day. However, as this man looked up, above him was a small Juro spider, and it was weaving a web. Seeing the spider, he remembered an event from 2 days prior. At that time, he had chased a spider from his home, and he indeed almost killed it, leaving him to wonder about the identity of that mother and daughter. These are these telling these stories are really fun. As my regular listeners know, I love myths and legends. I find them so fascinating. And so I think that one of these days I'll probably do a show on mysteries, legends, and myths of Asia before, because I think it's like sometimes I have quietly studied over the last several years when it comes to this, and due to my interest in practice in Buddhism as well, that I think that I might do a show on this: mysteries, legends, and myths of Asia. Are you in? I am. I'm already excited. Just thought about it right now, and yes, I am ready for it. But as for that story, what are your thoughts on it? Just imagine, either in a dream or in reality, because we saw two different stories here, totally myths. I really want to emphasize that, where you are encountering a very scary, ginormous 2-foot spider in one case that can shapeshift into a very beautiful woman, and in another case where it's actually able to infiltrate your dreams and then have you marry off the daughter, which makes me question, if this man did marry this alleged daughter, what would happen next? Would he turn into a spider type entity? Would he die? I want to know more to that story. I want to understand what would happen if he said, yeah, sure, why not? I'm going to leave my wife. I'm going to go for you. Let's do it. It's pretty wild. Oh, Michael, it says time here is 11:35. Oh my gosh. So I may miss you all when you're online. Well, I would like to mention that there's always over about like 100 people online at the same time on the Discord server. So it's chatty 24 hours, 7 days a week. I think you're going to catch someone at some point in time because it's also an international community. Everyone from everywhere. It's 1,000 people. It's a lot. And we're going to keep growing it, which I'm really excited for. So stop by. It's worth it. Okay. I have two more myths for you. And I'm saving the best one for last. The best one for last. It's very scary. Purple turtle is a new member. Thank you very much. I'm actually watching this Chinese TV show right now, and there's a purple turtle, but he's an immortal spirit. It's really great. And then never mind. I will never forget your name, Purple Turtle, because I'm watching a show on it. Very good. So this next one, these next two stories are both very scary. The last one for today is the most terrifying by far. By far. See, like I sometimes I wish I had like a very like dark kind of raspy deep voice or to like tell these stories to make them sound very scary, but I feel that I still tell them a little bit too lighthearted. So I'm going to practice my narrating skills, especially with my new show The Unknown Zone, which is literally all narration. So I'm going to practice on that to make these stories sound more scary. It's going to be my challenge. This next one takes place this legend takes place from the Scottish Islands. And if you look at it, yeah, it's pretty scary. What are we looking at here? We are looking at the Nucklavi. Yeah. And you're like, what the heck is that? Well, this entity is the most malevolent of all demons in and around the Scottish Islands without any redeeming characteristics. In summer months, it was restrained in the depths of the ocean. What does that mean? We are going to get into that. So, this entity is strongly built and stands nearly 6 feet tall at their horse head and about 9 feet tall at their humanoid head. And you're thinking, what am I talking about? For those that are listening and they don't have a visual, we are looking at this muscly figure that is a morph of a horse on the bottom and then a demon on top, but it's just one entity, and it's very disgustingly gross. So it's believed to be weighing about 2,000 pounds, and it resembles a horse whose legs are part fin like a fish and a single giant eye which burns with the red flame. A human head with a large head is merged along the top of the horse body like a strange centaur. The most gruesome detail of his appearance is the fact that he has no skin. Black blood courses through yellow veins, and powerful muscles are visible as a pulsating mass. Some reports claim that he is simply a very large head on two small arms, which, with other characteristics as mentioned above that I had just mentioned to you right now. Um, Yeah, no, Michael, do not put me on the spot. You gotta say it with a Scottish accent. I I I can't. I cannot do that. Not it would embarrass myself and it would make the entire country of Scotland like burn in flames of disappointment. Just start smoking, says Kurt, to get that raspy voice. That's okay. I won't do that anytime soon. But I've heard some, decade-long smokers and their voice is like nice and raspy. And I'm thinking, you really got to do some narration. It's so good. But I'm gonna pass on that. It's okay. I don't need it that bad. While this entity sounds mortifying in itself, it's actually one of the most feared in the Scottish Islands. Why is that? Well, because it possesses extensive evil powers and it can influence events throughout the islands. It's believed to have very toxic breath, which can wither crops, cause a drought, and can even cause disease and plague in livestock and humans. So imagine you're practically getting all of the horsemen in one. And get it? It's a horse and a man. Haha, it's very scary to put it lightly. And this is only one entity, and we're aware that the Scottish Islands, they have a lot of pretty wild, scary, and amazing entities in their mythology. But this one in particular is pretty scary, and the image more so. Well, I have one more story for you, and I'm also going to probably pronounce it incorrectly. So, for those in the Philippines, I am very sorry, but I'm going to say it anyway because I don't have a choice. And I have my image like prepared to share it with you. Let me take care of this. This entity is called the Manananggal monster. We're going to go for it. And it's described as very scary, often hideous, usually depicted as female. Let me pull that up. Okay. And it's always capable of severing its upper torso and then sprouting huge bat wings to fly into the night in search of victims. So this word, and I'm not going to repeat it, but this word comes from the Tagalog word, which means to remove or to separate. So it literally translates to remover or separator in case, in the case that it separates itself, the top half from the bottom half. And this is why this entity is so scary, not just by its looks, which are terrifying. You have a woman, just the top half. She's got bat wings. Her intestines just like hang loose while she's flying around. But I mentioned a little bit earlier that she's hunting for victims. She's hunting for food. What does she like to eat? It's very specific, I can tell you that. And she favors preying on sleeping pregnant women, using an elonged proboscis like tongue to suck the hearts of fetuses or the blood of someone who's sleeping. It also haunts newlyweds or couples in love. And other times, she seduces men with her beauty and lures them into a private place before eating them alive. She usually eats the insides, like the heart, stomach, or the liver. Yeah. Yeah. I think out of all the myths and legends that I've looked into that we've covered here and that we haven't covered at all, this one by far is the most terrifying. The pictures are scary. There's more pictures online that I didn't want to share specifically because this channel is made for families, right? But there are some very, very gruesome images that if you're interested for the spooky season, you can just literally Google it. And don't worry, I will place all of my links below for all of the sources that I used to do the research for today's show. And I'll probably type this one out specifically for those that want to do more research on this very, very, very scary entity. So here's kind of the story of how she became the way that she is. So, due to being left at the altar, right, grooms to be are usually kind of like the main target because it's believed that maybe that same thing happened to her. She was going to get married and then she was abandoned on her wedding day. The groom left her. So the severed lower torso is left standing, and it is more vulnerable of the two halves, just like in this photo. So if you happen to encounter this entity, which I really do not hope that is the case, but let's say you do, okay? Well, as the legend goes, you got to sprinkle salt, smearing crushed garlic or ash on the top of the standing torso, and this is incredibly fatal to this creature. So the upper torso then would not be able to rejoin itself and then would perish by sunlight. So it's already sensitive to sunlight. But now that if it can't reconnect its top and its bottom half, it's done for. So, like, let's say you just casually see the bottom torso, you see some legs on the side of the road, or you're on a hike. Grab your salt, grab your garlic, get some ash, rub it in, and you won't have to worry about having your heart swallowed out by this entity, or that if you're pregnant, no need to worry, you'll be fine. Yeah, very scary. Hopefully that's not the case. Also, kind of like reminds me of Beetlejuice, where they're in the waiting room and you just see like two legs and they're kind of like waiting, right? Yeah, it reminds me of that very much. So, whenever you go out, first, definitely be safe. Second, tell the person that you trust, know where you're going and when you'll be back. And also, always keep salt in your backpack and garlic just to be safe. You come across this entity. It's pretty freaky. There's another image. I don't know if I showed this one, but this one you see like her intestines just kind of sticking out there. No, thank you. So, what is your favorite supernatural entity? Whether it be a myth or legend or alleged cryptid, which one's your favorite? Either that we've covered today or that you've come across when reading a book or a documentary or something like that. I'd like to know because maybe I haven't heard of it and I need to look it up. And as we know, we're going to have a future show on the myths, legends, and lore of Asia. It could be very, very cool. Because who doesn't love a good myth? Who doesn't love a good story? Usually a scary story. I did have more cryptids and more myths to share, but we're kind of running out of time. So I won't be able to share them in detail. But we can always do this another time. We still got a few more weeks until Halloween. Oh, hides, of course. I gotta go with the Mothman. Of course you do, hides and long grass. The Mothman is like your spiritual animal. It's pretty scary. But I guess, now that we have about 10-ish minutes, maybe we could talk about the Mothman. There is actually one story not related to the Mothman at all, but usually when people can think about cryptids, they think about Bigfoot. And this is probably the most popular cryptid out there. And I think one of my favorite types of Bigfoot is Old Yellowtop. We covered this on the Mysteries of Canada. And if you haven't watched that show, I really do recommend it. We did part 1 and part 2, Jimmy Church and I. And I think it was in part 2 we talked about Old Yellow Hat. And it's a Bigfoot that's typical. It has brown hair at the bottom, but on the top, it has like a bowl cut and it's yellow hair and it's like long and it looks like a hippie. And I find that so comical. Out of all the stories that I've come across when it comes to Bigfoot on any part of the world, they're usually one color. They're usually brown, black, reddish, white, right? If you're looking at Yetis, or black, right? That's it. Those are your options. But in this case in Canada, they get this special type of Bigfoot where it's brown fur from the neck down, and on the top, it's just like yellow hay. I'm for it. I would like to see one of those. I think that one might currently be one of my favorite cryptids solely based on the description of it. Of course, Pukwudgies. There is no question there. Pukwudgies are my number one just for the name. And they just sound so cuddly. And the plushie I got is a very cuddly one. as well, and it's very small. I'm excited to show you when it comes in the mail. You'll be the first person to see it, people to see it. But let's hear, what are some of your favorite cryptids? Jessica, we got Pukwudgies. Yes, ma'am. It's the best. Have you heard of the Dobhard Chew from Ireland? No. No, I haven't. I've only heard about leprechauns. So I'm so sorry. In Ireland, and like their depictions of fairies as well. I used to live in Ireland. I lived there for about a year when I was about 6. But I wasn't exposed too much to their legend and lore, which I'm disappointed in because it is pretty rich on that side of the world. But I have not heard of that entity specifically, so I'll have to look at that one. Hit the like button. Yeah, thanks, Heinz. Kurt says, "Hey, Christina, just gotta say, that was very nice of you on SOR last night." Hey, thanks. And for those that don't know what SOR is, it's Spaced Out Radio. Thank you. That's very nice that you had mentioned that, but no, I don't, no, this is fine. Brown Dwarf says, "Yellow Top's a rock star." That would be a really great band name, I feel. Like if I were to have a band, which I don't know how to play any instruments, but if I did, Old Yellow Top would be like the coolest band name. Oh, and also, by the way, Brown Dwarf, so good to see you here. I know that you're a mod for Spaced Out Radio, so I appreciate you being here as well. And let's just catch a few more before we continue. Skyhawk says the Wendigo. Yes, okay. So like we've covered it so many times on this show that I had the notes ready, but then I thought, okay, running out of time, I won't be able to share the stories of the Wendigo and even the Skinwalkers as well because we've covered it so often. But it's a very scary cryptid, and one that is highly feared by the Native American tribes, and it's also believed to be real by them. And it's very scary. A quick thing for those that don't know what Wendigos are, or Wendigo, they're pronounced um, different depending on what part of the country you're from and what tribe you follow. But the Wendigo, there are these very skinny, very tall looking entities that instead of attempting to hunt you down because they are carnivorous, which is unfortunate, they were once believed to be people, and then they were taken by greed and gluttony, and then they returned into these really terrible entities. And it's believed that when you enter the forest, one, you always got to be careful, but two, they're going to attempt to enter your mind, giving you certain thoughts or certain, um, telling you certain things to do, and they'll take you and they'll eat you up. Yeah, very scary. The pictures are also pretty terrifying as well. Even though if you look across online, they're all slightly different on how they look, but still. Oh, Professor, yes. El Pombero, which is very much like the Pukwudgie from Paraguay. And we covered a video on it on Strange Paradigms a few weeks back. I know you were there. I know you watched it. But I would like to do more research on that little gremlin. I'll look at all goblins and gremlins because they all have a special place in my heart only because of the Pukwudgie. Let me take a look. Yes. Great question. And also great statement, Steve. The Yowie, which is Australia's Bigfoot. Yes, I had Ben Hurl on, who is a kind of a cryptid paranormal UFO investigator in Australia, and we talked about the Yowie. For those that haven't seen that interview on Shifting the Paradigm, I do recommend it. It was a really big eye opener for those that aren't familiar with the country and all of their cryptid sightings and just really all of their weird stuff. We talked about the Yowie and some of the really, truly bizarre stories that happened there. But when it comes to Australia, anything and everything happens there. Everything is scary there. Like the spiders, ginormous, weird creatures, and I don't know if I would go without like a flamethrower to go to Australia. But aside from that, I heard it's really, really pretty. This is like so nice. It's so fantastic to be able to interact with you one-on-one today for Mysteries with a History, to get your input on your favorite cryptids or even the favorite stories that we covered today. We really did cover a lot in a short time frame. So I think it's awesome to hear your input on that. And while you're here, if you didn't watch the first half, we are now doing 4 shows a week instead of 3 shows a week. So the new show is going to be premiering on Mondays, and it's called The Unknown Zone. And it is a short format video, about 8 to 10 minutes long, on a specific topic. This new one, my first one that's going to be airing, is on the Piri Reis map. If you don't know about it, we've covered it here before on this show, but we're going to do a more in-depth version of it in this premiere video that's going to air on Monday. Make sure to watch the trailer. It's already on YouTube. Make sure to like the video as well. I would really appreciate that, especially if you like it. Make sure to hit the like button if you like the video. Well, that is it, and that's all the time that we have for today. I want to wish you all a wonderful day. Make sure to stop by tomorrow, as tomorrow is weekly strange news, where I cover all the strange news from around the world. So you don't want to miss that. It's at 3 p.m. PST. It is live. And if you are listening to this on a podcast platform, jump on over. Every single Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, covering some pretty great articles. Have it be UFOs, have it be the paranormal, have it be strange science advancements, and things that are really just bizarre. That is it for today. Be safe, and remember, keep your eyes on the skies.